Now, not everybody might feel warm and fuzzy about terms like the cloud and the grid. And, there are instances where I'm intrigued by these green folks when they talk about getting off the grid. And this is a way of sort of eschewing modern technology in favor of something simpler. And it seems to assume that simpler is automatically better. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But it's also a view I generally don't share because humans are naturally complex. And embracing new and better ways to do things is just part of the march of humanity. And therefore, I think that sort of complexity can be embraced by just about anyone, anytime. And there are those who talk about getting off the grid as a way of disappearing, as a way of dropping out of the mainstream or disconnecting or going underground or becoming anonymous for some reason. And for me, I'm kind of the other way around. I appreciate the grid for all it is and for the interconnected, interdependent nature of grid that is the interdependent and interconnected nature of living God, of living spirit. Now, folks, way back in a recent former lifetime, as Dr. Mark would say, folks used to say I had a black cloud following me around because so much rain used to fall in my life, if you know what I mean. Whatever could go wrong did go wrong. But fortunately, most of that calamity was in my personal life. I guess fortunately, I say for some reason, because my work was relatively unaffected. But at the time, I had no idea what was happening. I had no exposure to or belief in anything metaphysical. It was my heathen atheist days. And only in hindsight did I see I was clearly in a committed victim consciousness in many, but not all areas of my life. And it was not as if I was giving in to the concept that I was cursed in some way. That wasn't it. I was well aware that I did not want certain outcomes. But what I was proving was the Course in Miracles maxim that one becomes what one defends against. Or as we often hear in religious science, I was praying the problem. For example, I'd sit in a restaurant and I'd order my food, and I'd sit there in my mind and say, don't burn my food, 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 don't. Right? That would cycle through my head. Now what Spirit is hearing is burn my food. They're not getting the don't piece. They're just getting burn my food. And I'm really committed to that burn my food. So, and of course, because I had spent so much time convincing myself of some, denying some undesired outcome, my food would not be to my liking. Didn't matter how it came out. Even if it was perfect to someone else, I would see some flaw in it. And then I'd say, see, it's a black cloud. I'm cursed. Now, mind you, Spirit was accurately and faithfully responding to the feeling behind my thoughts. And the feeling behind my thoughts, if I'm sitting there going, don't burn my food, don't burn my food, don't burn, I'm worrying, I'm not confident, I'm feeling unworthy, I'm not trusting, and that's what Spirit responded to, no matter what. So I was pouring a lot of thought and effort and energy into what I did not want, rather than declaring what I did want. And those are two vastly different things in the metaphysical realm. And all the while I was convincing myself that these things I did not want were happening to me. Not by me, not through me, but to me. It was the epitome of a self-reinforced victim consciousness. I had it down perfectly. And it worked every time. Now, the universe works best with affirmatives. So let me shortcut this for all of us here. Declare your good in positive, affirmative, expansive terms only. And that is to say, stop with the double negatives already. I can say from experience that Spirit's response to double negatives are diluted at best, meaning thinned out. They're more than a little contradictory. They're more than a little confusing. And at worst, Spirit simply misses one of the qualifying negatives in your double negative, and so it just interprets it as all negative. So in the restaurant now, I say, thank you, thank you. I affirm that my food is delicious, it's healthy, it's nurturing, and it's perfectly prepared, and it is. Now, right now, just resign yourself to using that basic tool, the 4 Ps, to declare your good. And it's personal, powerful, present tense, and positive. Every time you pray, every time you treat, every time you affirm, take the time to construct your declaration, construct that realization, construct that affirmation to be personal to you, to be powerful, to be right now, present tense, and to be positive. And maybe even write it out or recite it aloud until you get all the double negatives out of that language. And then notice how everything begins to shift for you. Just notice that for yourself. It's like magic, but it isn't magic. It's religious science. Now, the lesson is that the cloud to which I refer is not a black cloud, but it's more like an angelic cloud of rejuvenation. It is a cloud of vast resources that you do not have to carry with you, but are always instantly available to you. The cloud is really kind of an angel, I think, and I'm not referring to the winged beings with white robes as depicted in Western European folklore, but a spiritual being believed to act as an attendant, as an agent or a messenger of God for you and to you. Think of the cloud as that angel, like the computer cloud that gives you access to vast resources at any time from anywhere. God is always available. God is an infinite resource that is available to you anytime, anywhere. Now, one may also not have such warm and fuzzy feelings about the grid. You know, it's not the most likable term, I feel. It could be, some people might feel like it's this monolithic obstruction or a kind of fence keeping one separate from their good, something that imprisons someone or something that keeps someone separate from their power. It could be viewed as a kind of a net that catches and tangles things. But think of the electrical grid as a kind of spiritual safety net and a spiritual power source. You may not know exactly the path and source of the electrical power that reaches your home, but it works when you switch it on. Spirit may not come the way you choose or imagine, but it is there when you turn to it. A computer grid also functions as that kind of collective power of consciousness. You know, paraphrasing from the Bible, where two or three are gathered with spiritual intention, Spirit is in the midst. And grids are two-way, by the way. One can be sourced by a grid, and one can contribute to the grid. So at times one can be fed spiritually, and other times one is serving Spirit in some way, that they're serving at some essential level to this greater good, to this greater connectedness. Now, I and other ministers here talk a lot about spiritual practices and how they prepare one's consciousness for ever greater good in one's life. Now, the cloud lightens one's load. It helps one feel that much closer and immediate with the all-pervasiveness of God. The grid fortifies one's faith, and it bolsters one's confidence. So as one participates more fully in the spiritual grid, one is circulating more good in their life. So the spiritual practices, here we go: meditation, treatment, affirmation, spiritual study, journaling, being of sacred service, participating in spiritual counseling, visioning, tithing, and being a part of the beloved community. All of those spiritual practices exercise and energize your spiritual systems. And what I implore you to do is to integrate more fully spiritual practices into your everyday living. A spiritual practice that is confined and contained to the prayer cushion and the personal altar has rather limited effectiveness. But intentionally incorporating meditation and treatment throughout the day can have fantastic power. From time to time, bring some form of your practice out into the world. Shake things up, especially when some aspect of your spiritual practice becomes comfortable or familiar. In fact, why not set an intention right now for yourself to bring your spiritual practice more into all aspects of your life? Can you do that? Beautiful.